This is Andy Gutierrez from StarWars.com, and you are listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Z. This is the podcast you're looking for.
This is Vanessa Marshall, Harrison Dula from Star Wars Rebels, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to Coffee with Kenobi, show number 557. This is your spoiler-free place for Star Wars community and conversation. I'm your host, Dan Zera, thrilled to be talking Star Wars with each and every one of you. You can support Coffee with Kenobi by following the show on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, and TikTok, and subscribing to the YouTube channel. Help spread the word by tweeting that you're listening, share it on Facebook, or invite your family and friends to tune in and share a cup of coffee with us. CWK is a proud member of the Spreaker Prime program. Thank you to the official travel partner of Coffee with Kenobi, MEI and Mouse Fan Travel. If you are interested in a no-cost, no-obligation quote for your next vacation, check out coffeewithkenobi.com/mousefantravel and let them know Coffee with Kenobi and Dan Zare sent you. Thank you also to members of the CWK Alliance. Find out how you can join the Alliance for as little as $1 a month and get access to exclusive podcasts, videos, and much more at coffeewithkenobi.com/CWK Alliance. On today's very special show, I got to partake in some Andor roundtable interviews with members of my peers in Star Wars fandom, including fansites, podcasts, and YouTube. We will be talking with Kyle Soller and Denise Gough from Andor, Genevieve O'Reilly, who plays Mon Mothma, and Diego Luna, Cassian Andor himself, are joining us. I got to ask each of them some questions. What a special thrill for me. I'm so thankful and excited to share it with all of you. So pull up a chair, grab your favorite coffee mug, and let's have some coffee with Kenobi.
So who talks first? You talk first? I talk first?
All right, let's get to it. So the way this works is every outlet gets to ask one question. So I will introduce the individuals and their outlets, and I will share their questions. First is Brandon from Talking Bay 94, and he wanted to know about their characters, Brandon and Denise I'm referring to, and the fact that they probably don't view themselves as villains. So how do you portray something like that?
Well, Tony crafted pretty well-rounded, three-dimensional characters first off, and so that made it kind of easy to understand that, you know, we're not in a world of Star Wars where it's, you know, goodies and baddies. It's kind of a deeper exploration of, you know, the light and shade in everyone, and therefore it's holding a mirror up to anyone watching, you know, there but for the grace of whatever you believe in. Who knows, if you were in Dedra's situation, maybe you'd do exactly the same thing. I mean, who wouldn't torture a few people to get to where they need to get to? So yeah, I feel like Dedra thinks she's the hero of every story.
Yeah, and I certainly think Syril believes he's the hero of his own journey. I remember speaking to Tony at the very beginning when he was fleshing out the arc of the character, and he was like, I don't really know where he ends up, you know? I mean, is he good? Is he bad? I don't know. And so I decided to take that kind of conflict, that gray area, which exists all throughout Andor and exists really in Cassian, actually, which was, you know, beautifully presented in Rogue One. It's a really human condition to question the entire time, is this the right thing I should be doing? And Syril really comes from a place of lack and of hunger to strive and be recognized and to have power and station and some form of identity that he can find within this political structure of fascism, basically.
And that makes you like really ripe for that sort of that fascist thinking, doesn't it? Because it's so black and white. If you do this, you will have power.
Yeah.
If you get this guy, you
there
will
is no
have
gray.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
for people who exist on both spectrums to move into that world where there is no gray, it's dangerous because their own shades are all taken out and you just become quite viciously
ruthless.
Ruthless, exactly.
Yeah.
Next up is my buddy James Burns from Jedi News, and he wanted to know if either actor was able to learn more about their characters through interacting with one another.
Oh God, I think we found in it, well, I can only speak for myself, but when I met Kyle's character. When I met Syril as Dedra, I was like, oh, this makes total sense.
Yeah.
You know, we had this thing happen too, where in my fitting for my costume, I put the uniform on and I was like, yeah, it's great, of course, but I need it tailored and fitted and it needs to be really perfect. And the costume designer said, that's hilarious because that's what Syril needed too. So it was really clear that they're both like super meticulous and tidy and clean and they want everything perfect. And that's why, you know, they sort of,
they're like imperial twin flames. And
definitely.
they like totally find and see each other within the other.
Yeah.
And
it's like a love story. It's like an evil love story.
And I think, you know, from Cyril's perspective, he has an interesting journey where he starts out quite high and then he experiences a loss and he regains strength through finding Dedra. And so that's
and Dedra starts at the opposite. So I'm like at the bottom of the ladder, you know, and I'm faced with the kind of ineptitude of so many of the men that I'm working for and with. And then she slowly, through her own kind of determination and her kind of attention to detail, she rises up at the time when he's going down. So it's like they meet just in this perfect storm of like each of them needing each other at exactly the right time. Dedra is less sort of open to it initially, you know, she doesn't want to share this stuff with anyone, but then once it's really clear that he's useful,
persuasively evil,
and then they live happily ever after. It's kind of simple.
Next up is Caitlin from Sky Talkers podcast. Caitlin mentions that in Rogue One we learned that rebellions are built on hope. What is the Empire built on?
Ooh, that's such a good question.
Wow.
Ambition.
Yeah.
No, that's not right though. If a rebellion is built on hope, an empire is built on...
It's the opposite of hope.
Yeah.
Fear and anger.
Fear, yeah.
Well, it's what Yoda says, isn't it? Fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering.
Yeah, like the empire is built on like resentment.
Yeah, power, domination, you know.
Yeah.
They're looking to spread their tentacles as far as they can. And that's the really interesting thing about developing this backstory of Cassian is you find that we're getting into a new area of Star Wars, into the outer reaches where there's not much imperial influence. And then, spoiler alert, here they come.
Dun, 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 dun.
Next up is Alex from Star Wars Explained, and he wants to know, with Kyle specifically, about the characters in the blue uniforms, which we'll see when the show airs in September, and what their connection is sort of the greater overall picture.
Yeah, well, Dedra exists in an entirely different framework of the imperial structure. And Syril is at the beginning of Andor. He's on the outer reaches of the kind of Star Wars galaxy in a kind of overlooked star system. And it's very much a kind of corporate bureaucratic structure system. And he's part of the kind of law system that's kind of operating within that system. And have I said system enough already?
I
could say it one more
would
time.
like you to say it again.
Okay, I'll fill it in. And so as he's trying to rise through the ranks of that system, he winds up making some really huge mistakes by going behind the back of his superior officers, who are really quite lax and feel like, you know, the rebels aren't really anything to worry about. You know, this is just some kind of like little tiff, and we don't really want to cause any trouble with the Empire, the Imperial agencies coming in. So why don't you just like sit tight? And that's exactly what Syril wants. He wants more order, more structure, more Imperial presence.
He's like a rebel within that system.
Yeah. In order to get himself to the place of the ISB, which is where Dedra exists. And that would be kind of like, you know, the SS of the kind of Star Wars universe, which is like very selective, very intense.
Yeah, hugely. Very tidy.
Yeah, very tidy, very clean.
Very clean, very tidy.
Next up is Gustavo from Triad of the Force, and he wanted to know, how has the real world affected the moral ambiguity of their characters in this series?
It's funny because George Lucas said that all the Star Wars, especially in the early days, it was all political. It's always political. Even works of fiction can reflect back what's happening societally. And I think the more I think about certainly Dedra in the position that she's in, this sort of addiction to power and a certain level of fame and what that can do to a soul, you know? So a person who starts out with all of these talents, because there's no doubt that these people that we're playing are incredibly talented and intelligent, and if put to use in something more wholesome, they probably do really well, but they exist within this, you know, fascist regime. So they apply their talents and their sort of addictions to needing to be seen within this structure. And certainly Dedra, as a woman in this man's world, you know, she wants to rise to the top of that structure. So unfortunately, they make these sort of poisonous decisions, but they come from a place of, you know, first of all, from a place of lack. So they're looking for their identities, I guess. And I think that that is happening in our current climate and has happened throughout history. It's just now in our current climate, we have, you know, social media and the ability to get seen and heard in ways that maybe we didn't when the very first Star Wars happened. But yeah, we're moving through the times, aren't we? And this is a very human exploration, a work of fiction for sure, but you know, it's going to resonate in many ways.
It's no surprise that it's resonated for almost 50 years,
Yeah.
right? Because it's dealing with us and them, the people that have, the people that don't, the people that are in power, the people that have less power, and those that exist on the outer edges. Cassian, you know, all of the characters that Tony has developed within Andor are all, in a way, outsiders trying to find their place, trying to become part of something, of a movement, of a cause. And
they're staging their own rebellions within the things, right?
Exactly.
So we're in like the structure of the ISB and the Empire, but within that we're rebelling. I'm rebelling against the idea that, you know, someone like Cassian Andor is to be ignored. So she's staging a rebellion within the Empire structure, and so is Syril for sure. So there's like mini rebellions going on within the big rebellion that you think is just about good and evil. It's like, yeah, but within that, there's all these colors too. And I think that's what makes kind of long form episodic shows like this that are able to explore all of that so interesting and so exciting, certainly to work on anyway.
Next up is Richard from Skywalking Through Neverland, and he wants to know if either of their portrayals were inspired by another Star Wars character from another film or someone in history.
No, I think we both just took what was on the page, and we had really good connection with Tony Gilroy, who, you know, came up with the first few scripts and then had arcs for our character, and we really fleshed it out with him. And I think, you know, if you know about Star Wars, if you've ever seen it, you know, the ghosts of those other characters probably always live within the walls of the sets and everything and in the pages. But what Tony really created was something new and fresh. And these really conflicted villains who, you know, are existing in a gray area trying to find their way. And so I think they were totally unique. But
Gus Fring from Breaking Bad is always like my favorite. I don't know, there's just something about his meticulousness and his sort of complete detachment, and yet his ability to kind of perform in the real world. Like you see him in, you know, the chicken place and talking to normal people, and then you see him go and prepare to murder someone. And so there was something very satisfying about a character like Gus Fring for me as Dedra.
He definitely fit into our squad.
I definitely think so. So I think I don't base Dedra on him, but he's in the tribe of villains that, for sure, that's somebody we would invite in to our home that we live in together now in, you know, Disney villain world.
Yeah. And Ben Mendelsohn in Rogue One.
Yeah, he's got to come.
Always.
Dead. There we go. Everyone's dead. Sorry, guys.
Thanks so much. In both of your performances, how do you balance the science fiction of the Star Wars universe with the tone and realism of Andor?
Well, Tony Gilroy did that really.
Yeah,
We've
yeah.
both spoken at length about how when I read these, certainly the initial 3 scripts that I was sent, and Dedra wasn't in any of them. All I was reading was like a new piece of writing, like a thriller, spy, love story, rebellion story that then happens to be in the Star Wars universe. I certainly didn't read it from, and I worried about before I agreed to do or to kind of pursue the role. I wanted to read the script so that I would be able to relate, because I'm a theater actress, and who mostly any screen work I do is all very emotional, very human, very based in the real world. And I thought maybe I'm not cut out for the world of Star Wars. And then I got sent these scripts, and I was like, oh, this is not a space show. This is like a human show that happens to be in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, and I think that's unbelievably clever what Tony
Definitely
accomplished, because he's going to give diehard fans exactly what they're looking for.
Yeah.
But he's also going to probably bring in a whole group of people who haven't been Star Wars fans, because they can connect with this socio-political human drama story that is also a thriller and a spy thing.
Sure.
And it's something that,
I mean, I'll watch it. I've never watched Star Wars, but I'll watch this.
If you can get her, you're doing something right.
So Star Wars, Luddites.
Next up is Keith from Father Son Galaxy, a Star Wars podcast, and he got a huge reaction from the town. It was really quite awesome. He wanted to know, where were their scenes filmed, and why is the location so important to storytelling?
Wow, what a great question.
Oh my God. So we shot in Pinewood Studios in London, and Dedra, because it's quite, it's mostly in the ISB. So it was in a studio, but obviously built. And then I had one day where I shot in this village, this town that was built by the art department and the design department, that was so it made it so beautiful to act in, because you didn't have to pretend. Like, I thought that the whole thing was going to be green screen, and then I would be pretending to talk to people, and instead we had this whole playground to play in. Like, it was, for me, it's not that it has to be that way, but I do think that it's better for actors to work on the real thing,
Yeah, absolutely. And it also it pays homage to the original films, and they were building all those sets. They didn't have a lot of CGI.
Yeah.
And we were afforded that because of when we were filming it during the pandemic. And it gives it an extra level of authenticity and makes you feel like you're really there.
Yeah.
And all the drawers have stuff in it, and all the cupboards have things in it. And
there was like a sushi bar it seemed like a sushi bar, but in space, and like all these bowls of food. And I thought, well, there won't be anything in them. And then I went over, and there was like blue noodles and like little insects that it was just, yeah, you would have really liked it.
It's the most incredible thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Kids should be allowed to go and like play on that after we're done.
As you can tell, both of these actors were incredibly talented and insightful, intelligent, and just funny. I was really charmed by them. I think you'll really be blown away by their performances. But next up, we're going to talk with Mon Mothma, Genevieve O'Reilly. Here we go. First up for Genevieve is Star Wars Holocron, and they wanted to know, how has her perspective on the character changed over time, as this is the third time she's portraying Mon Mothma in live action?
I think we know Mon Mothma so much from the films over the years, from where Carolyn Blackstone originated her in Return of the Jedi, through to the few times that I have had the opportunity to play her. But each of those times previously, they were quite public roles, and she has a dignity and a serenity to her that it reminds me of like a pillar for the rebellion, something strong, something calm. And what was an extraordinary gift with Tony Gilroy's writing with Andor is that we meet Mon Mothma in a completely different place, navigating a very different world than we're used to her seeing. She feels she's working within the Empire. She feels different, she looks different, but we also meet a private side of Mon Mothma. We get to meet not just the figure, but also the woman. And that's what I think will be exciting for fans to watch as much as it is for me to play.
Next up is Brian with Pink Milk Podcast. And the question is, would Mon Mothma, or what advice would Mon Mothma have for members of the queer community in regards to protecting their rights?
Yeah, I'm going to lean into where we find Mon Mothma in Andor. And she is somewhere different than we've seen her before. Usually she's surrounded by a band of rebels. She's in with like-minded thinking people. When we meet her at the beginning of Andor, she is a lonely voice in opposition. She is trying to have a voice in a space, in a workplace, in a world where everyone seems to be thinking differently to her. And they are oppressing her ideas. They are oppressing people. What we know in Star Wars, and we know where we're going to go in Andor, is very different from where we start. Where we start, we have all these characters, both Mon Mothma and Cassian Andor, among others, who feel alone in their fight, who feel alone in their beliefs, in their ideas. I think what will happen going forward is that they will find each other, that they will reach out, that they will risk, that they will find their community. And it is in finding your community that you can collaborate and you can stand up and you can seek to make a change and revolt together.
Next up is Trisha from Fangirls Going Rogue, and she asks Genevieve about her cut scenes from Revenge of the Sith, and will it be worth it to watch them after getting the entire picture through Andor?
I hope so. That's what was so exciting for me, to come in and step into Tony Gilroy's writing in Andor. He is writing not just the political figure, not just for Mon Mothma, the rebel, or who will become the rebel leader, but he is writing for her as a woman, what it costs to be this figure, how dangerous it is for her to stand up for what she believes in. And I think we will, given the time and the narrative space that Tony and Disney are investing in her, I think it will be worthwhile. I think the wait is worthwhile, and I'm excited to have the opportunity to play it.
Keith is back from Father Son Podcast, and he asked Genevieve, when it was first pitched to her to play the role of Mon Mothma, how was the character presented to her?
That's a great question, Keith. I think when I was offered the role, or to step into the shoes of Mon Mothma, nearly 17 years ago now, when I was a young actor for the film Revenge of the Sith, it was really important for me to look at what George Lucas and Caroline Blaxton created originally for Return of the Jedi. And you're right, it was a very small scene, but it was a really important scene within the film. And I think the character of Mon Mothma has a lot of gravitas within the Star Wars world because of who she is as a woman, how she stands up with a quiet confidence, with a dignity and a serenity, with a calm leadership that the rebels need at that time and continue to need in each iteration that we see her.
Next up is Brandon from Talking Bay 94, and he wanted to ask Genevieve, how has her role in Star Wars evolved over 20 years, and how has it remained the same?
Well, I think as an actor, I inhabit the role. That's my job. So whether that's television or animation with the voice or big screen, It's essentially the same job. I have to inhabit a character and bring her to life. I will say that I think Andor in particular is unashamedly, ambitiously cinematic in its scope and in its scale. So it felt like a piece of film that we were making every day. The designs, the set design, the costume design. It's huge. It's epic. And it's wonderful to get to play Mon Mothma again in that arena.
James from Jedi News wanted to know, how does it feel to have played this character for so long, and how does she feel the character has grown?
It's a unique opportunity to get to play the same character at different times in her life relative to the different points in my life. And I feel I have grown with her. It's wonderful to have the opportunity at this moment to explore her as a woman, as a leader in a difficult time. I'm thrilled that I have the opportunity to do that now at this point in my life, where I have a history of not just this character behind me, but of other roles. And I can bring, I think, a texture to the development of this character that I wouldn't have been able to had I had an opportunity to do that 20 years ago.
Next up is Charlotte from Sky Talkers, and she wanted to know, how did Genevieve's wardrobe impact and influence her performance as Mon Mothma?
I worked with our genius costume designer, Michael Wilkinson, very closely. He has a beautiful eye. And he worked with Francoise and Malin, and the three of them curated her outfits in a way that I haven't been able to experience before in film or television. Michael, Malin, and Francoise worked with me almost as if we were in an atelier for haute couture. They crafted and curated and created these beautiful, beautiful pieces of wardrobe that I never knew Mon Mothma would have had. It was a joy to be given the opportunity not only to wear those costumes and to feel different as Mon Mothma in them, but also to help craft them with Michael Wilkinson. And I'm looking forward to yourself and fans to seeing Mon Mothma in those pieces of work and seeing that labor of love on screen.
Alex from Star Wars Explained wants to know how Mon Mothma would describe the Imperial Senate both in public and behind closed doors.
I'll start with the fact that the Imperial Senate is vast and huge and exposing. And when one is speaking in a space like that, it exposes vulnerabilities. It also exposes your passion. It forces you to steel yourself and have a voice in your beliefs. It can be alienating because it is so vast, because it represents such interplanetary structure. There will be voices aligned with mine, and there will be many voices opposed. I think the inner machinations of a space like that are difficult to navigate. And as a character, one has to be brave to step into them, to own your own voice and fight for what you believe in, even when you might fail.
Gustavo from Triad of the Force wants to know, how does Genevieve take moments from Rogue One and Revenge of the Sith and combine them into what we see in Andor?
In regard to the moments in time, the only moment in time that has happened before this story, before Andor, is Revenge of the Sith. We have yet to get to the Mon Mothma in Rogue One, and then eventually the Mon Mothma in Return of the Jedi. Obviously, they inform my portrayal of her because I know that they exist, and I want to pay homage not only to Caroline and the work that she did in Return of the Jedi, but also the work that Tony and Diego and I, among many others, did in Rogue One. The scenes that were shot in Revenge of the Sith didn't really make it to the final cut, but they still exist in deleted scenes. And they also live inside me because I got to play them. And so they live in my cellular memory. But what's wonderful about Andor, and where we find Mon Mothma in such a new space in Andor, is that she can carry those hopes and those beliefs and that idealism that she had in Revenge of the Sith. But it can manifest in such a completely different reality when she has to continue to stand and fight against this wall of opposition as a woman in a working environment that is the Imperial Senate.
Sarah from Skywalking Through Neverland wants to know, what do we learn about Mon Mothma in these scenes showing her private life, and what does she bring from her own life into the role as well?
It's wonderful to know the public woman, to know her serenity, to know her dignity, and to have the opportunity as an actor when she enters a private space to be able to let that go, to be able to take a cloak off. In fact, maybe in it, I'm not sure if I'm remembering correctly, but maybe in that first scene, you see me take off the Imperial medal. And I wanted to do that, to show that in life, sometimes we have to release ourselves from the robes we wear. And that was what we're reaching for with the different sides of Mon Mothma through Andor, to reassess who she is publicly when we see who she is privately. Can we break down that serenity? Can we break through that glass that she is and see what is perhaps more chaotic and more difficult and more painful in her private life? And then how does that inform who the woman she is going forward? How much can that give texture to this public woman that we know going forward, if we know the pain or the cost in her private life that she has had to carry with her?
Hi, thanks so much. Talk about the amazing fellow actors that you work with and how you all work together to enhance one another's performance.
In Andor, there is quite an extraordinary ensemble of brilliantly talented actors. Diego Luna, Adria Arjona, Denise Gough, Kyle Soller, Fiona Shaw. I'm not sure how many more I'm allowed to mention, but I'll start with those. They are the cream of acting talent, both in this country and in yours. It's a joy to stand alongside actors of that caliber, to stretch each other, to push each other, to inspire each other with, yourself, with great fellowship around you, with everyone else reaching. You can only work better and achieve more. They're a special group of people, and I'm really excited for everyone to see the collective work that is the ensemble of Andor.
Another amazing series of interviews. Really honored to be a part of this incredible roundtable with my peers. But we're going to take a quick break. When we return, Diego Luna, Cassian Andor will be on Coffee with Kenobi to talk about the upcoming Disney Plus show. I'm Dan Zare, and this is Coffee with Kenobi.
This is Vanessa Marshall, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
Okay, now it's time to listen to Diego Luna as he joined us for the roundtable. Buckle up, it's going to be awesome. Up next is Brandon from Talking Bay 94, and he asked Diego what his backstory for Cassian was in his mind when he was portraying the character, and how did it match up with what we're going to see in this series.
In terms of the specifics, not at all. Obviously, not at all, and gladly, because probably the story would have been boring if it was mine. And the writing of Tony Gilroy is amazing and complex and intense and interesting. But in essence, it's there. It's all there, you know. I had to answer myself those questions of like, what is he? What does he mean when he says, like, I've been part of these fights since I was 6 years old? You know, how come can he say that? I mean, what is he referring to? What is that dark past he talks about? What is that terrible stuff he did for the rebellion? All of that I had an answer for. And tonally and yeah, it does connect with Tony's ideas, you know, but gladly, this is much more interesting, obviously. And the building of the backstory is so perfect, man. It is like every question has an answer. He writes such rich material, you know, full of tiny layers that create a very complex structure. I really like his writing and his view on this show.
James is back from Jedi News, and he asks Diego, what was it like for his children to experience Rogue One, and then as they have grown up, seeing this new version of Andor in the Disney Plus series?
Well, it's different. My daughter is much more into it now than back then, you know. She was I guess too young, and the film was too challenging for her. And my son loves the idea and is very excited, and it was nice because with the series I had the chance to share much more with them, you know. Like when I was shooting the film, I had to keep a lot to myself. I was also kind of like nervous, and it felt like I had to be like just concentrated in the film, because it felt in a way that I was thrown into like a vehicle already moving, you know. And here it's different. I've been involved as a producer, therefore I've been part of this project for 4.5 years, you know. And I've been able to talk to them about the whole process and explain what's happening and showing them stuff, and gladly I have the chance, to share this with them and make sure they understand what I do, because at the end, I'm doing this for them too, you know. And they are excited about it, and I'm glad for that.
Caitlin from Sky Talkers asks, since we know the resolution of Cassian's story from Rogue One, what makes this character so compelling that we're going to want to come back to the character and learn about how he got his start?
I think, well, first of all, that what he does, like the rest of the team in Rogue One, is something that not many do, you know, that makes him being very like different and interesting and a character to celebrate. I think, you know, what that team is willing to do, to sacrifice themselves for a cause, it's something that makes them unique, you know, I think. But what is interesting here is that we're gonna find out that he was really far away from being that person at the beginning, you know, and that he in fact it's like you or me, you know, like it's a story about real people that you can connect with, that you can empathize and understand their journey, you know, because Cassian, when we find him, he's a guy that is just trying to survive, you know, in dark moments of his life. He carries a lot of pain, and he has no hope in becoming something he could feel proud of. And that's where we find him, and the journey and the awakening of the revolutionary is what I think it can be very interesting to witness.
Alex from Star Wars Explained asks, how does Diego anticipate people reacting to Rogue One and other Star Wars stories after getting to experience the series Andor?
I do think that you're gonna be able to watch Rogue One after seeing Andor with different eyes. You're gonna understand the characters in a different way, and you're gonna see stuff you were not seeing. It's quite interesting because Rogue One is pretty much about an event. You don't get to know much about the characters. You know a little about Jin, and that's it. But it's more about what they're capable of doing when they work together as a team. And now we're gonna tell you what needed to happen for someone to become that person. And I think you're gonna revisit Rogue One with different eyes. You're gonna understand what he's talking about, and what was the life of people in order to be willing to become part of change, to articulate something, to fight the empire, articulate something in a community, become part of a community that feels strong enough to fight the empire. I think this show is going to show you what their lives were like, how difficult it was to live, how little freedom you had, how marginalized society was, and also you're going to learn a lot about the people working for the empire, because this show also tells you those stories, and you will also get to know what their life is like, and you'll get to meet the people behind the uniforms, So I think it's going to be interesting for audiences to go back and watch Rogue One after.
Next up is Gustavo from Triad of the Force. He asks how Andor represents colonialism and Latinos in this country.
Well, the beauty of Star Wars is that it's like every piece of science fiction. It's a great tool to make comments on the present and on reality. By telling you, I'm gonna tell you a story about a galaxy far, far away. You'll bring down your guard, and then I can tell you a story that even though it happens in a galaxy far, far away, it might have a lot to tell you about your own reality in your galaxy, and it is kind of, it's part of Star Wars. It's always been, that Star Wars makes comments and that reflects a moment in history, and yes, this story is pretty much about Cassian is a refugee. He's been forced to move without being able to look back. He leaves something behind, and in Rogue One, no one has his accent. He comes clearly from somewhere else than the rest, and this Andor is a story about people, coming from different places and articulating a thing called community, that makes them stronger, and I think that has a lot to do with the world we live in, and what's needed these days. It makes the story pertinent, I think, and it's one of the reasons why I'm involved in this project, is because I feel I can tell a story that matters today. Yeah.
Sarah from Skywalking Through Neverland asks, as an executive producer, what kind of input did he have on the music, and what was important to him to capture the tone of the series through music and have it stand on its own?
I have to say that I witnessed the process of I witnessed the process, always impressed by what was happening. It's Tony Gilroy. It's quite an interesting leader. He thinks of everything before you're even shooting. I'll tell you a story. There is one scene. I won't tell you which scene because I will be spoiling the story. But there was a piece of music that was created before we even shot the scene where that music is part of the score, and it's happening there. Like there is this piece of music that matters so much in an episode that it existed before we even went on shooting. And I was on set playing a moment, like a scene where this music is going to be playing, and I could hear the music when I was shooting. I'm telling you this story because I think Tony writes, and when he writes, he has to know what the space of that he's writing for is. It has to be designed already. The space where the scene happens. He doesn't write like, well, this happens in the lobby of a hotel. No, he says this happens in the lobby of a hotel that is like this. And you can tell he had a drawing, and he worked with the production designer before writing the scene on what space was the scene going to happen in. Same thing with the music. I think he ambitions how things are going to sound before they're even shot. And when he's writing, he has that in mind. It's quite amazing. So when you ask me about the music, I was just celebrating every step of the process, because he's so much in control. And obviously we have not a composer, we have the composer,
Hello. Good to see you, my friend. Andor's this bold, new, mature direction in Star Wars storytelling, and I think we learned that in the first 10 minutes of the first episode. Can you talk about the shift in tone to a much more adult Star Wars story?
Yeah, I don't know if I would say adult. I would say definitely complex. I would say darker and greedier. But I don't know if adult would be the word, because my son, I think it's going to be hooked to this, and he's 14 years old. I think it's about what you look for in storytelling, and I think there's audiences for everything. And this story, it definitely touches on a more, darker and greedier tone, close to a spy thriller. It's a political thriller too. There's obviously there is moments of big action and adventure, but it's also complex, and it's more character driven, and we'll get to see those people relating, and we'll be patient to witness the life of these characters. The long format allows you to do that, to not to have to choose and stay in one mode, to move around, to transit. And the show is ambitious in that way, because it does try to go to places you're not expecting, basically.
Up next is George and Josh, and they want to know, how different is the final cut of Andor that we're going to get to see on Disney Plus compared to the original vision and scope of the show when it was first conceived?
I mean, I don't know. It's I don't think much. But there is something that happens, and it's the nature of collaboration. It's like there's an idea, but then a producer comes in, like Sana, and her perspective matters, and then suddenly that shapes the project in a different way. Then we start working with Luke, who's the set designer, the production designer, who's an amazing mind, and when he starts designing, even the scenes change, because they are going to happen in a different place. So the writing has to change. And then you cast the project, and even though you had in mind someone, when you end up casting an amazing actor comes out of nowhere, and you go like, shit, that's a character, and that transforms things. So, and that happens more in this format in a series than in film, because a series, it's like the process starts for the first block, and you start shooting while there's stuff that is still being written. It's a machine that doesn't stop. So obviously things are not what they are till you finish all the process. But what I can tell you is that the energy, the vision, it's been one since the start, since we started pre-producing this, and it's Tony Gilroy's, and obviously all of us, we are around to collaborate and to help his vision elevate to where it deserves, but it's all about his vision.
Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are, with Dan Z, the podcast you're looking for. This is...
That is going to do it for this week's special episode of Coffee with Kenobi. I want to thank Disney and Lucasfilm for having me be a part of this amazing round table with some pretty stellar talent. We've got Kyle Soller and Denise Gough, Genevieve O'Reilly, and Diego Luna. What a great time. And I think it's going to give you a lot of insights into what you can expect from Andor. There is still an embargo for review, but I think this will certainly whet your appetites for the things you can look forward to in the show. I also want to thank not only you for joining me each and every week, but Coffee with Kenobi's official travel partner, MEI and Mouse Fan Travel. Go to coffeewithkenobi.com/mousefantravel and sign up for a no-cost, no-obligation quote. Have Becky and her team help you plan your magical vacation to the Galactic Star Cruiser, Galaxy's Edge, the theme parks, the cruise lines, Star Wars Celebration next year in London, and you can also support Coffee with Kenobi and me in the process. Join us next Monday night at 7 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time for Facebook Live, where we look at the second episode of Light and Magic on the Bucking Bronco. We had a great time this week earlier talking about the first episode, so join us for the second one. And that is at coffeewithkenobi.com/live. The CWK Cafe is our Facebook group for Star Wars thoughts, comments, reviews, and opinions in a family-friendly, spoiler and drama-free place. Coffee with Kenobi is possible because of the members of the CWK Alliance. Thanks to you, the podcast, Facebook Live, event coverage, and so much more comes to life. Find out how you can help the show for as little as $1 a month by joining the CWK Alliance, and you will receive access to CWK Pro, an exclusive weekly audio and video podcast not heard anywhere else. Members at the CWK Alliance All-Star level receive a video edition of CWK Pro and access to a private Facebook group as well. Plus, Coffee with Kenobi Alliance Grand Masters can join me for a monthly live video call. To find out more, go to coffeewithkenobi.com/CWK Alliance. 10% of your monthly contributions go directly to the St. Jude Children's Hospital. And as far as this week's topic for CWK Pro, we review the first episode of She-Hulk. So we get to talk about all kinds of fun pop culture stuff in addition to Star Wars. The website is coffeewithkenobi.com for Star Wars news, announcements, reviews, videos, and so much more. You can email me, danz at coffeewithkenobi.com. Connect with me on Twitter at Mr. Zer, MRZEHR, on Instagram, DanZerCWK, and on LinkedIn. Coffee with Kenobi is on social media, on Twitter, where you can become a super follower, on Instagram, Pinterest, TikTok, and give the show a like at Facebook on facebook.com/coffeewithkenobi, and subscribe to Coffee with Kenobi's YouTube channel. Please take a couple of minutes to rate and review the show on iTunes, Google Podcasts, or Spotify. Every single review that you do helps to push us up when people search Star Wars in their podcast catchers and helps us bring more people to this wonderful community. If you like the logo, go to coffeewithkenobi.com/shop for CWK t-shirts, hoodies, phone cases, pillows, laptop covers, and so much more. And if you are starting a podcast or a blog or have one and want to expand your brand, go to dnzmedia.com and I can help you get that process started. I'm available to come to your school, conference, business, or organization to talk about how to tap into your strengths and help you bring out your very best. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining me on this Wednesday edition of Coffee with Kenobi so I could share with you the interviews with the cast of Andor. It keeps getting more and more exciting around Coffee with Kenobi, and that is thanks to all of you. So please let everybody know that you are listening. Tag them in the comments. Tweet it online that you are listening to Coffee with Kenobi, and bring more people into this amazing Star Wars community. Thank you so much again, everybody. Have a great week and weekend. And remember, this is the podcast you're looking for.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.